On my bench sit the land paper, the tax card, and the coffee tin of receipts. The whole bill for starting off-grid living, item by item, what each move cost to start and what it asks of you every day after. $89. That is what the card read last year, on 5 acres. Except the number that ends most off-grid dreams is not the land, it is the gear people buy before they need it. My name is Hank Ross. I am 70, and I live off the grid at the end of a road the plow does not come down. But here is where my own bill started, with a number in my head that would have made a banker laugh if I had ever let one see it. 11 winters ago I signed for 5 acres of oak and rock, and it turns out the first year bill, all 6 moves together, came to less than the used pickup I drove to the closing, but the expensive mistakes are the ones you buy before you need them, and that is the thread of this whole video. So when a 20-year-old in the comments of another video, close to 300 likes on that one, says he wants out but figures the money will never be there, I can tell you the money is smaller than you think and stranger than you think. A 17-year-old under him is counting the days after high school. So I put the receipts on the bench and we will count the ugly ones first, before the prices. Tell me where you are watching from and tell me the number you have saved so far. I read every one of those, and the comment board under this channel has turned into a better price list than anything a salesman will hand you. Now let me deflate this thing before it inflates. Most of these off-grid videos on your screen right now are selling you somebody else's dream cabin, golden hour light, slow fiddle music, a drone shot that costs more than my first truck. Let me be straight about what this one is. This is a bill. 6 moves, each with a price on it, from the first acre to the first winter, priced off a life that actually ran on them. What it will not do is sell you a house. If you came for golden hour, the door is over there. Here is the first thing that saved me, and it costs a pencil. There is a sheet of half-inch plywood leaning in my workshop with 2 columns penciled on it. The left side saying what we refuse to give up, the right side saying what we happily lose. 11 winters, and it still gets rewritten every December, because children grow and eyes get older, and the list changes when the family changes. Everything I spend on power starts on that board, never in a catalog. The truth is, the board is not a budget, it is a mirror, because every line on the right side is a thing you admitted you can live without, and admissions like that are worth more than panels. The cheapest kilowatt you will ever own is the one you decide not to use, and no salesman on earth will tell you that, because nobody earns a commission on a decision. Remember that sentence the next time a sizing chart crosses your counter, because the chart is written by a man selling equipment. People who tour my place call it the Hank method. I call it being broke in an organized way. Consider the 2 columns as they stood last December. Left side, the refrigerator, the well pump, 4 rooms of LED lights, a laptop, the washing machine on Saturdays. Right side, the electric kettle, the dishwasher, the clothes dryer, air conditioning, and a television bigger than a barn door. Notice what happened there. The right side of that board is worth more than the left in dollars, because every gadget on it would have forced another battery onto the shelf and another panel on the roof. Think about the kettle, because it is the cleanest example on the board. Coffee boils on the wood stove in January for free, because the stove is already lit for heat, and the kettle was only ever a way to buy back 4 minutes of a morning. 4 minutes against $400 of battery. That trade is on the board in pencil, and it has been crossed out and rewritten 3 times in 11 years, which means a load list is not a decision you make once. It is a December habit, like tuning the chainsaw. So move 1, the ground, and here is where the dream usually dies of embarrassment. Folks shop for a view, however, when they should be shopping for water. The cheapest ground I ever priced in my life was in Howell County, in the southern Missouri Ozarks, and it is no accident. Southern Missouri counties run timber and pasture instead of corn, and the 2025 county maps put ordinary Missouri farm ground anywhere from the mid-3,000s an acre to over 10,000, but the rugged southern stuff sits at the bottom of that range. Which means the ground you can actually afford is not the compromise, it is the whole point, because timber ground with a spring on it beats picture ground with a mortgage every single time. You do not need the top of that range. Now, before you drive out there, consider the 2 moves that cost nothing. Call the county assessor and ask for the parcel card because it shows the taxes the last owner actually paid, and the assessed value on that card, not the asking price, is what your own bill is computed from. Two neighbors can pay wildly different taxes on identical ground, and only one of them read the card first. Walk the parcel after a hard rain too, because a road that is passable in August can be a museum of mud in March, except the listing will never say so, because mud does not photograph. Access is a price whether or not it is on the paper. A woman in one comment section I read left the country entirely and bought 3/4 of an acre overseas for $1,800 cash, $35 a year in land tax, and her warning was better than my whole paragraph. Arrive in early spring, she said, or winter arrives first, which means buy the ugly south slope with the spring on it and let the tourists fight over the ridge with the view. The view does not cook dinner. Move 2 is water, and this is the number that separates the men from the tourists. Drilling a well in this country runs anywhere from $18 to $65 a foot in 2025, and a typical residential hole goes 100 to 300 feet, which is why so many off-grid blogs quote $4,000 to $12,000, and why so many buyers faint at the quote. My own hole is 150 feet of limestone, and it hurt. But here's what the driller told me straight once I asked. Limestone is dear to enter and cheap to live with, because the water in it runs clean enough to drink after a $5 test. I want to walk you through why, so you can argue with a driller instead of just writing checks. The rig charges by the foot because every foot is steel casing pushed through overburden. But when the bit hits solid rock, the going slows and the meter keeps running. Phone 3 drillers before you commit. Ask each what depth the neighbors on that road hit water, and if all 3 say the same number, that number is your budget. Remember that number when the quote lands on your kitchen table, because the meter on a drilling rig does not negotiate. The pump on top of the hole, however, is its own bill, anywhere from $300 for a shallow jet pump to $3,000 for a big submersible, and the pressure tank after it. But before you drill anything, walk the parcel in February looking for green patches and cut banks, because a spring you can prove may already be doing the work of a well you would pay 5 figures for. A developed spring is pipe, a screen, a catch basin, and a weekend of shovel work. Call it $200 in parts against $10,000 in steel. Except remember this, water never walks uphill for free. Every foot the water has to climb is a foot of pump you pay for twice, once in hardware and once every single day after. Move 3, power, and this is where I tell you the used glass secret. 400 watts of secondhand solar panels ran the lights on my workbench for years, and I bought them for the price of a decent chainsaw, because panels do not die of age the way batteries do. Glass and silicon just sit there making watts, but the used market is full of them because installers upgrade whole roofs and haul the old glass away. Bring a multimeter when you buy used, hold it to the terminals in open sun, and if the panel reads within 10% of its sticker, that is a bargain, though the frame may be ugly and watts do not care about cosmetics. Except a cracked frame is a bargain killer, so look at the edges before the watts, because water gets in at the crack and kills a panel in one season. Batteries are the real bill, and here is the rule I learned the expensive way. Never buy a used battery, ever, because you are buying somebody else's mistake with no warranty on the hidden half of the chemistry. Buy the smallest new bank that runs the plywood list and grow it later, one battery at a time, in the same brand, so the old and new play fair together. But a bank usually dies of its weakest link, and it turns out the weakest link is a cable lug and not the battery at all, so label your cables the day you set them. A fella in the comments asked for the smallest possible start, just a panel to keep a computer and a phone alive. And that is the right question, because the answer is roughly $150 and a Saturday, not a bank loan. Now picture your first February. The fridge hums, the well pump kicks, the phone needs its charge, and the sky has been the color of a wet dime for 4 days. What do you cut first, and what does your wife say when you cut it? Sit with that for a second. It turns out that decision, made cold and made together, is the whole difference between a homestead and an expensive hobby. The first dusk mine ran true. I sat in the truck for 20 minutes watching the workbench lights glow like a wood fire, and I want you to understand what I was actually looking at. Not watts, a bill I would never pay again, shining. The answer to the gear question was in that glow, more panel later, never more panel first. Move 4, heat, and I will pick a small fight with the industry. The average cord of split hardwood in this country ran about $320 in 2025, and a hard winter in the Ozarks eats 4 to 6 of them. Do that math on a calculator and you will see why I own a mall. But the mall only earns its keep if you split on schedule, the week you cut, while the wood is still wet and soft, because a dry oak round fights the mall like it owes you money. A man asked in the comments where the endless firewood comes from, and the honest answer is that on wooded ground it comes from patience, from stormfall, from the neighbor's fence line, from dead standing oak that dries all summer. The arithmetic of free wood is a calendar, not a wallet. It gets worse, and this is the part city boys never plan for. A cord is a stack 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet, and green wood cut this April will not burn worth a damn until the October after next. So the man who starts his woodpile the spring he buys his land is the man who is warm the first winter, and the man who starts in October is the man knocking on my door in January offering $20 a wheelbarrow. What I will not put in my house is a heat pump with a circuit board, because the fancy units pick the coldest night of the year to die. Murphy wrote that law before I was born, and I have watched it execute on Christmas Eve. A wood stove cannot refuse to work. Wood, match, warm. If this is the first honest bill you have seen on this subject, subscribing costs you nothing and it keeps the lights on over here in the more literal sense than most channels mean it. Move 5, the money underneath it all, and this is the one nobody films. 3 questions show up under every video like this. What is your job? How do you pay for anything? What about a medical emergency? The first 3 years on this ground, I still took outside work, winters on a county crew, and pretending otherwise would be a lie with your money. But here's the thing about the arithmetic. With no mortgage payment and no utility bill, the monthly number a family must earn drops by more than half, and half of a small number is a thing a body can actually carry with seasonal work and a trade. Think about what the grid actually billed you for, because the kilowatt was never the whole of it. Delivery charges, account fees, the water base rate, the sewer you never once thought about, trash, and the interest on the mortgage that paid for the square footage you heated for a house you were never home in. Off the grid, you fire that whole department, and what is left is a list of jobs you can count on 2 hands, each of them small, each of them yours. Consider that the raise nobody counts when they price this life. On my shelf sits a jar that saved $1,100 for ball joints one February without a trip to town for a loan, and that jar is a bigger safety net than any credit card I ever carried because it never once raised my rate. Remember how the jar rule runs, a plain one. Every dollar the ground lets me keep goes into the jar first and the catalog last, and in 11 winters that jar has paid for a well pump, 2 sets of tires, a hot water heater, and 1 miserable February of dental work. The medical question deserves more respect than a paragraph, so next week gets a whole video, but the short version is a county clinic an hour out and an insurance card you keep paying even when it feels like robbery. Move 6, the county office, and I promise this is the cheapest hour in the whole project. Before you sign anything, you walk in and ask 2 questions. 1, if I put a small cabin on this parcel, what does the county say? 2, show me every permit filed on the ground around it, because what the neighbors were allowed tells you the truth the brochure will not. The zoning map is public and the clerk is usually glad somebody asked before buying instead of after. But while you are at the counter, ask about the septic rules too, because a perk test costs a few $100s and it can make or break a building site before you own it. A failed perk test before closing is information. After closing, it is a tragedy with a deed. Ground with a restriction on it is ground you rent from the county forever, and I would rather own 5 restricted acres I understand than 40 I didn't. This step is free, which in an episode full of bills might be the most valuable sentence in it. Now imagine your cousin calls tonight, and he has got the fever, and he wants the short version. Read him this. Buy the ugly acre with water on it. Prove the spring before you drill. Used glass, small battery, plywood list before panels. A mall and 4 cords stacked by October, not a circuit board. Keep the outside job 3 years and keep the jar full. Ask the county 2 questions before you sign. Remember the order matters because the order is where the savings hide. That is the whole bill, and it is less than a year of rent in any city I can name. I will confess one thing, and it sells nothing. For the first 2 winters I missed things I was ashamed to miss. Town coffee on a Saturday that cost $4 and tasted like burnt paper, a choir practice, a busier silence than the one I own. But missing is a bill too, and it is the only one on this list that shrinks by itself. By the 3rd winter the missing stopped showing up, and I noticed it stopped the same week the jar covered its first emergency. You do not miss the world you can afford to visit. So tell me your number and your county in the comments, what you have saved, and where you are shopping, because the next 20-year-old scrolling past deserves a real price and not a brochure. The board under these videos has become the best list of honest numbers on the subject I know of, and it got that way from you, not from me. Next week, I open the toolbox and go through it honest, which tools earn their keep on 5 acres and which ones only look good on a shelf, with prices on all of it. Until then, remember the 3 lines that got me through. The dark comes early, the cold comes honest, and water never walks uphill. Plan for those 3, and the grid becomes optional. So there is the whole bill for starting off-grid living, item by item, and what the life asks of you after. The same land paper, tax card, and coffee tin I opened this video with. It comes to less than a used pickup when you buy in the order I gave you, but the gear you actually need is a shorter list than any catalog will admit. I am Hank. I put one of these out every single day, and the jar on my shelf says your cousin can do this.